Professor Siobhan, can you tell us what are the current gaps in the implementation of counter-trafficking efforts in relation to the rights of persons with disability?
Thank you very much for this question, and thank you for the opportunity to raise these concerns. There are very significant gaps currently in planning and programming to counter trafficking, specifically in relation to ensuring that we are preventing trafficking of persons with disabilities and children with disabilities. So, for example, children in institutional settings or persons with disabilities who are dependent on a caregiver may be particularly vulnerable to exploitation. But because of the lack of awareness of risks of trafficking and lack of access to information for people with disabilities in accessible formats, we are not really being effective in our prevention actions. So many anti-trafficking action plans at domestic level don't include specific attention to ensuring that information is accessible to persons with disabilities, that legal assistance is accessible, that the appropriate procedural accommodations have been made, and that safe accommodation and shelter is available to persons with disabilities who may also be victims of trafficking. So there are multiple areas where we really have significant gaps. Also within the criminal justice system, for victims and survivors of trafficking, we need to ensure that accommodations have been made so that they can participate fully in legal proceedings, and that they are accommodated in doing that. But I think the critical message really is to think about prevention. In all of our information awareness campaigns, in our programming, are we ensuring that we are thinking about specific risks that may be faced by adults and children with disabilities? And we need to listen to them and ensure that they are participating in the planning and design of prevention actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Siobhan. That was really very important, as you've mentioned. So I'll proceed now to ask the second question. Professor Siobhan Mullally, how is this trafficking in persons disaggregated data important for your work as United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking in your engagement with national governments?
Disaggregated data is hugely important to my work, particularly highlighting persons with disabilities who may have been identified as victims of trafficking or at risk of trafficking. Without that disaggregated data, we don't have a strong enough evidence base to inform the actions of governments, to advise them on how best to plan, to program to combat trafficking in persons. And breaking down that data by gender and disability, age and disability, race and ethnicity and disability, all of that gives us the information and the evidence that we need so that we can really target the prevention actions and ensure that we are not missing groups of people who may be in particularly vulnerable situations, and also ensuring that our assistance and protection is reaching those who are most at risk, and that we have that information, that we have that profile. And critically, of course, to enable governments to target resources, financial resources, to support those who are working with people with disabilities and children with disabilities, for example, to ensure that there is effective prevention action in relation to trafficking in persons, and to ensure that the appropriate accommodations are made in providing assistance. So that disaggregated data is really important in giving us that evidence base and being able to plan and really program our actions. And that, I think, really will ensure that we are more effective in doing what we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Siobhan. This will definitely give a lot of our panelists and, of course, participants to think about and discuss for the webinar.